The South African Communist Party says that it has taken a resolution to run for the 2024 elections with or without the ANC. SACP General Secretary Mapaila said that the party is now changing gear with the intention of addressing challenges that have been left unattended despite the SACP raising them repeatedly. Mapaila was speaking during the SACP's Red October campaign under the theme Land, Food and Work at the Umzimkhulu in KwaZulu Natal over the weekend. And concluding its 15th Congress in July 2022, the Communist Party also said in its assessment of the alliance that the party has determined that the momentum of the communist struggle with its alliance partners has stalled and even reversed in some respects. Now, SACP General Secretary Mapaila joins us now for more on these perspectives. Mr. Mapaila, welcome to Morning Live. Good to see you.
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to our viewers.
Mr. Mapaila, now you hold... I'm sorry. No worries. You hold the Red October campaign annually, and it's, of course, inspired by the 1917 socialist revolution in Russia and moved by poverty in the main, if you will, in South Africa. Now, what has the impact been on the material conditions of people on the ground to this point?
The impact is devastating, Sakina, in those communities where poverty reigns supreme. And that's why we have decided our Red October this year will focus on food security and work with communities for self-sustainability on the food front. And our comrades, as we have seen in Umzimkhulu throughout the week, we have been planting vegetables for the people in the squatter camps, as well as the people in a sheltered home for battered women and children, which should not be happening actually in our democracy. But we went into those areas, we planted vegetables for them as part of addressing the food question, so that they can have sustainability and then they can look after the crops themselves. We have also engaged with local municipalities, the government, and the mayor came to see the women who we assisted to plant in a piece of land that was given to them by through their councillor, which was very important that the government was involved in this request by the women who were looking for a piece of land to plow. We assisted them, therefore, to proceed with that plowing. And therefore, from that perspective, they will then be able to produce food for themselves, create work for themselves, and look after themselves without necessarily relying exclusively on government, which at the moment is the reality. And even that reliability on government is unsustainable because of government programs that are not reaching out to such communities or inadequate provision of food. But generally, there's starvation, there's hunger in our communities, no work. And that's why we have also felt that this focus on the right to work campaign should be embraced, particularly by all young people, so that government and the public sector should take responsibility for job creation. Anywhere else in the world where you have a high rate of unemployment like ours, you will actually have a social revolution. We're just lucky. We have not reached a point where the people have revolted in the extreme forms against this democratic government. So we're embracing that and making sure that people are also given back the land, because for them to do anything else, it must start with the land. As you know, the Communist Party launched the land campaign in the late 90s to try and organize government to transform property relations in society, to give people back the land. And that process has been taking too long. So we've brought back the land question as a critical area of focus in our Red October campaign going forward.
Mr. Mapaila, just looking at some of the problems that you pointed to, so the statistics of sky-high unemployment rate, of food insecurity, of poverty that have persisted throughout this particular democratic dispensation. You say that as the Communist Party, you will go to elections with or without your alliance partners, but how much culpability do you accept as the South African Communist Party for these things that have gone wrong, or for proper progressive policies that have not been implemented, because you are in an alliance with the governing party?
Yes, That's a very important point, and this point has been raised by our members over the years because we participate in policy formulation. If you look into the ANC manifestos since 1994, there are major left questions or issues that are affecting the working class, which have not yet been implemented since then, some of them. So you can't blame us necessarily for being in the alliance and for putting this question. We have done that. But the implementation has been a problem. Capital has been quite significant or playing a significant role in drifting away the focus of the democratic government. And I think even government itself, that's why when we're speaking in Umzimkhulu, we're also raising the point that we seem to also have forgotten even how to legislate for the people. We're beginning to legislate largely for business. In other words, the ease of doing business has been the centerpiece of legislation, even if the people benefit out of that particular process. That is why, for instance, informal sector work has been undermined. Hence, even when we're Umzimkhulu, we had a long discussion in the Scotta camp with Babahlali Basem Jondolo, so that we discuss with them the challenges that they are faced with in self-sustainability, to prove that some of this legislative framework have not been focused on the most needy in our society. So we take some responsibility in that regard, but retain our independence to criticize those who have put in abeyance the most important policies that should actually assist our people and focus on those that are required by business. That's why we're felt that this decade of freedom should actually proceed to be much more a focused decade of the working class and the poor in our country.
Is the criticism enough, though, Mr. Mapaila? Because during your 15th Congress, you said that the SACP is, in its sober assessment of the current state of South Africa, actually concluded that the momentum of the communist struggle with its alliance partners has stalled and in some aspects even been reversed. So what is still keeping the SACP in the alliance? Again, you look at something like what is seen as the privatization of some key state-owned enterprises, the SAA saga, for example, looking at what's happening with Eskom. And many people have asked, so how does this square with what the SACP stands for and what is currently happening?
We stayed over the years in the alliance and as well as in participating in government to deepen the needs of the working class and the poor. But it doesn't take away the fact of the responsibility that I think we've spoken about. We have accepted the regressions in many respects of our revolution, or the key pillars of our revolution. The non-racial question, gender inequalities have all been going high. And the many other issues that we have spoken about, levels of poverty. We have never believed that under democratic dispensation, poverty will rise or inequalities will rise. We had thought to reduce all of those at a rapid pace. But now the Communist Party's own Congress took a decision to stand for election on its own, with or without the alliance, but based on the framework of reconfiguration of the alliance and creating a roadmap of engagement with our alliance partners, so that first and foremost we unite the revolutionary forces as headed by the ANC. And the ANC can therefore listen to us, because at the moment sometimes we raise issues, they look the other way, they pretend we have not even spoken to them. That is why when we're criticizing recently the medium-term budget policy statement, which continues to isolate the working class in the main, or focus on the government's responsibility to create jobs. So in that regard, the framework has been discussed with the alliance component.
All right,
but it
Mr.
doesn't
Mapaila,
stop us from going on our own.
If I may pause you there, apologies for the interjection. If you would just bear with us, because we struggled with the connection, so we came to the interview slightly late. If you just bear with us, we're just going to take news quickly, and then we'll come back to conclude the interview. Mr. Soli Mapaila there of the SACP in conversation with us. So just coming back to Mr. Mapaila, the South African Communist Party, saying that it has taken a resolution to run for the 2024 elections with or without the ANC. Mr. Soli Mapaila, who is the SACP's General General Secretary, in conversation with us. Mr. Mapaila, thank you so much for your time and indulgence. So we ended on that point where you were talking about the resolution to stand for elections. But what does that mean in no uncertain terms when you say you will stand for elections with or without the ANC? So is the SACP willing, ready to go it alone at this point? Or are you still hoping that, there would be some place where you can find congruence with the ANC and be happy enough to still back them as the party who would run in the main?
Well, there's no concept of alone per se. We work with the working class. As you know, even COSATU at its Congress had to vote on this matter. Would have ideally wanted a unanimous decision by the Federation on this, but nonetheless respect its internal democratic processes. The issue in our resolution is that first we want to strengthen the revolutionary movement, not to divide it. That's the intention. And therefore, to make sure that working class issues are on the table and prioritized. And that is why in this context of the resolution, we spoke to the question of reconfiguration of the alliance, renewal of the alliance, unity of the alliance forces, a mass movement of the workers and the poor, socialist mass movement that should now take responsibility for many other things that needs to happen rather than necessarily leave this to elected politicians. So it is in this regard that that resolution at its end talks to us participating effectively in the elections with or without the reconfiguration of the alliance, precisely because the reconfiguration of the alliance has been on the table for the past decade and a half, and it has not been happening. The last 5 years, after our last Congress in 2017, we put this matter quite clearly, including the processes for the roadmap. But later on, the ANC itself, which was a critical partner in this regard for electoral options, had thought it would take this matter to its NGC, which NGC never took place for the reasons of COVID-19, which we understood. But then when they went this year to their provincial conferences, as well as the policy conference, the reconfiguration of the alliance was again in the back burner. So we felt that we cannot continue to please the party and not please the working class, the people that were established to serve. That is why, and therefore, this resolution has been taken. But we're still engaging with our alliance partners in this regard for the development of the roadmap. And there will be final consultation also inside the Communist Party to outline our process of the way forward.
So speaking to that point, in your role as vanguard of the working class, what is your view on the wage negotiations deadlock between government and workers' unions? Government refusing, for example, to budge on that 3%, of which the workers say it's under the inflation rate. It was not a negotiated position, but it was in fact imposed. And what do you make of that, especially given that Minister Thulas Nxesi is the SACP's Deputy National Chairperson and he's the country's Minister of Employment?
Well, we do not accept the government's position in this regard. But Sakina, I'm sorry because I was talking to you both of you earlier this morning. My confusion, sorry about that. This matter, as you know, started with then Minister of Public Administration, Umzimkhulu, who's now in another department and no longer taking responsibility for what they had started, reversing a decision that was implemented for 2 years by government, and therefore government reneging on the last year, on the third year part of that multi-year agreement. So that's where it starts. It's the collective of government that must take responsibility, which we have condemned in the past. In fact, Minister Mkhulu knows very well. We discussed with him. We even told him not to go to court about this matter. And he tried to say it is not him who's taking this matter to court. We said, go to court and tell them you are handling this matter differently, but fundamentally, you must honor the agreement with workers. He didn't do that. And now, they did not reach agreement this time because workers are more careful now, because they realize that any other agreement that you sign with government can be reneged upon if they've set this very wrong and bad precedent. Comrade Thulas comes in to try and rescue the situation, albeit at a very low level, where it's even impossible to rescue the process. For instance, declaring this, his intention was basically to say, let the Minister of Finance, as he tables his medium-term budget policy statement, include whatever is possible of the workers. But I'm not here to speak for government. The bottom line is that it started not now, and it must be resolved in favor of the workers, because these excuses by government are completely unacceptable.
But you do accept then, Mr. Mapaila, that this seems rather duplicitous on your part as the SACP, when you have one of your very own high office bearer in the SACP presiding as the Minister of Employment over what is an imposition according to workers on them. And it goes directly against, it's contrary to the message that you are trying to put out there.
There's no minister who's a minister of the Communist Party. There are party members who are ministers. The ministers are ministers of government of the people of South Africa, and they follow cabinet decision. But nonetheless, we have said to these comrades, they do have executive powers. They should exercise these executive powers effectively in favor of the working class. So there should be no confusion regarding the posture of government and the positions of the Communist Party. We have never been confused by a lot of inefficiency sometimes that takes place in public administration, in government as a whole, if you like, because very wrong decisions sometimes have been taken there, which we believe could have been taken differently, including these many other crises that we face. We have a crisis of energy in this country, which should have long been resolved. And there's been many promises to resolve these matters, the crisis of security in our communities. So that's why we've taken decision to work on our own with communities to resolve some of these problems rather than wait for government's interventions.
So just in conclusion, how then do you hold your members accountable? Because, you know, the whole issue about members of the party serving a government, for me, that's all semantics, Mr. Mapaila, because at the end of the day, these are members of the Communist Party who one would imagine subscribe to whatever it is that your policy positions are. And if then, as you say, they can exercise executive power within those portfolios, how do you hold them accountable if and when they don't do so?
Well, we engage with them all the time. I mean, all our members who are deployed in government, we do convene meetings with them for accountability purposes, to also share perspectives and understand some of the challenges that they face so that we support government. Because as you know, we've fundamentally been a party supportive of government measures for progressive change and democracy and development in this country. But to the extent that when we're engaged with them, they find difficulties in cabinet or where they are working in government, they take decision guided by that different collective. That is why we can only say to them, exercise the mandate that you have been given through the Constitution. Don't be corrupt, serve the people wholeheartedly and well, and do your best. And if there are problems, raise them in public, even to the relevant stakeholders. In this regard, for instance, discussions with the trade unions would have been ideal. But the reneging on this deal by government was not started by us or by any of our comrades.
Well, we have to leave it there, Mr. Mapaila, but thanks so much for speaking to us, SACP General Secretary Solly Mapaila, on the party's Red October campaign and, of course, the issues pertaining to its relations with the tripartite alliance partners.